You know, from time to time, we end up working around power lines, hot lines, and there's a lot of things that a climber needs to know when they're working in an environment with electricity. You know, the power companies, a big job that they do is to top trees so that the branches don't get up into their power lines. And a lot of the power lines, especially the primaries, are generally uninsulated lines, and if the branches touch those uninsulated lines, then that becomes a short circuit to the ground. The tree becomes very hot, very, very dangerous. This is exacerbated in wet weather because the tree is much more conductive when the outside bark is wet all the way down. Now, occasionally I get into a job where I've got to deal with a tree that has been butchered repeatedly by the power company. And this next job that I'm going to show you right now, they're not huge trees, but it was quite awkward because of the way the power company has repeatedly butchered these trees for decades. And I'll show you what we're talking about. Come on, let's go get up into a tree. Okay, I want you to take notice of this particular wire. This is not the primary, this is a lower wire, but those are the primaries up above, and the lower wires are, in this case, insulated, but they have a support guy cable that supports the whole thing. And you have to be extremely careful because it'd be really easy to look at this and say, oh, it's insulated, it's safe, I can hang on to it or I can work around it. But we have a huge problem with rodents. Squirrels will chew on the cables. They chew on the insulation, and you can have an insulated wire that will conduct electricity through the support wire. Doesn't happen very often, but it can happen. And I want you to take notice of the way that the power company is butchering this tree and has been butchering a tree. It's extremely dangerous up here, and I'm having a hard time feeling even remotely safe. I have to take lots of little cuts. There it is. There's some squirrel damage, and that's where it drops off into the house feeds. So it's not high voltage like the primaries, but it's enough. You can still get killed with it. And I'm in an awkward spot here. I did finish the upper area, and I wanted to show you that the power company, I'm not mentioning any names here, but for decades, they've been spurring these trees without any regard for the tree itself. Now, granted, the trees were planted in a bad spot, but these trees were about 50 years old. They were small, they were dwarfed. Because they'd always been topped, they never were allowed to get too tall, but there was a lot of decay in there. The trunks, however, were actually pretty sound. I got to, oh, this is cool. This is a carpenter bee. Carpenter bees are just, I think they're just amazing little insects. They're quite a bit larger than a standard bee, and they burrow into dead and decayed wood, or quite often dried redwood. I love it. Look at that guy. I think they're beautiful. You know, when I was a young man and I wanted to know something, I would seek out and read something in the encyclopedia. And that's what we had for all of our information. Now, in this new age of the internet, all you have to do is ask your phone, say, search carpenter bee. So I did. You know, I can't say I'm an expert on carpenter bee, but I'll tell you what I found out. Carpenter bees are not bees that make hives. They're solitary insects. The male carpenter bee does not sting. The female does, and she can sting repeatedly. They don't lose the stinger like a honeybee does. They create a small, perfectly round hole in wood, oftentimes in houses, in construction wood, and they don't eat the wood. They expel the wood out the hole. And for the most part, they're pretty docile insects. Even a female that can sting rarely stings because they need to be provoked. So don't harass the carpenter bees. Hope that helps.